Welcome back to the Prophetic Podcast. I'm your host, Drew. Today in the studio, we have Mr. Derek Avery. He is running for Dallas County Commissioner, District 3.
Yes,
Did I get
sir.
that right?
Yes, sir.
And he's running on the ticket of Revitalization without gentrification. Sir, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I was looking forward to this conversation. I'm very happy. This is cool. This is cool. So, if you'll give everyone a little backstory, where you're from, how you landed here, what you're working on. So they
Yes,
can
sir.
know. Okay.
Yes, sir. So I'm originally from Houston, Texas.
Go ahead.
But I got to Dallas as quickly as possible. Been here last 10 years. Real estate developer by trade. Focus on affordable housing and building mixed-use neighborhoods. And clearly I focus on revitalization without gentrification. I'm a property tax consultant by trade as well. So I've saved taxpayers over $1 billion in valuation over the last 10 years as well. So, yeah, got here. I was married at the time. I moved my family up here. We had a friend that was having some mental health challenges. And also we wanted to explore Dallas and see what it had for us. And we moved up here, and it's been a dream since I moved here.
Dallas being a dream. Okay. So what is it, let's just start light. What is it that you like about Dallas?
I like the history. I like the people.
Okay.
I was driving any city that I go to, and I tell everyone this, I go to MLK to see what it looks like. Because as a developer and having my inspiration from Tulsa, Oklahoma, thinking about O.W. Gurley in 1921.
Gotcha.
And having a group of black folks that could develop an area in 1921, I said, well, we should be able to do that in any part of history now, any city. And I would think after the civil rights movement that MLK would be the most popping part of any city. And it would be the black mecca of that city. And so I drove to MLK here, and I said, well, this is crazy. I mean, MLK terminates right into the State Fair of Texas in Fair Park. You have the bridge right into Deep Ellum, into downtown. I mean, you're 2 minutes from downtown. And, I didn't understand it. And then you had the intersection of Malcolm X and MLK. And I said, well, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I said, this is it, and I said, well, why does it look the way it looks? It's not the worst. But it's not the most happening area of the city. I said, all of our businesses should be here. This is where we should all gather on the weekends and throughout the week. This is where we should be spending money. This is it. And I said, well, this is probably where I need to develop. This is where I need to make a mark.
What history have you found to be the reason? What did you find?
Well, it's a number of things.
Okay.
I think about the book, The Accommodation by Jim
Shoots.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And shout out to, my opponent, John Wiley Price. He wrote the foreword in that book.
He did.
The problem that I see is that we have the Accommodation 2.0 now.
Okay.
And I say that because redlining was a big part of it back then, but it's still redlined today. There's a good news story called Banking Below I-30.
Okay.
And it's all about modern day redlining. And the conditions that we see now are based on historic conditions, but you had white flight, you had black flight. And so then, when the black folks moved to all the suburban cities, then you have, MLK, and you have, South Dallas, where, just a lot of people moved out.
Right.
But then because people moved out, you don't have the population numbers. And then you start thinking about, okay, well, when businesses are there and they want to go to the banks that are right there in the community that should be abiding by the Community Reinvestment Act,
right,
they're not lending. They'll donate to a large nonprofit and say, hey, we're lending to the community. But you won't see them write home loans. You won't see them write business loans for that neighborhood. That's why it looks that way. It's not that they aren't good business people right there in the neighborhood. It's not that people are less intelligent than other business owners in other areas. It's just that opportunity.
No access.
Correct.
So what's your plan to change that?
Oh
That's
man,
that's the revitalization part, I'm assuming.
absolutely.
So what's your plan for that?
So it's actually quite simple.
Okay.
One, you hold banks accountable. And now there's a number of ways. I'm the chairman of Project Reach that was created by the federal government, the Office of the Comptroller of Accounts, and I'm over the home ownership stream. And so there's about 80 banks, all the large banks and even medium-sized and small banks in the local area are a part of it. And the idea is to make sure that they're lending to businesses and they're lending to homeowners.
Okay.
And that's on one side of it. That's holding the banks accountable. And they're at the table. And, I was blessed to have that opportunity, and I asked them, I was like, when they asked me to be the chairman, I said, are y'all sure?
Making waves.
I said, well, because if y'all ask me to be the chairman, I'm not going to join this group just to have conversations and talk about cool things. No, it's about action and it's about work.
Right.
One of the things that we want to start is a community development financial institution that kind of fills the gaps of where banks won't lend because they have certain thresholds. But we want to create something that fills those gaps where people in the neighborhood can, become homeowners. There's a 20% home ownership rate in 75215 and 75210. And to have a stabilized neighborhood, you have to have at least 50% home ownership.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you think about when people say a neighborhood is all rental property, there's nothing wrong with rental property. You have to have a balance, though.
Okay.
And if you have a balance of homeowners and renters, then you have a neighborhood that's sustainable, that, there's enough tax revenue that's going to where it needs to go. So part of that, like I said, is holding banks accountable, and we're doing that, but also creating the type of financial institutions that will be conducive to, our people being able to get loans and our people being able to start their businesses.
Okay.
The other side of that is, on the policy side, on the development side, is creating those protections, because it's easy to start developing an area, but then you have to think about, okay, are we revitalizing it or are we gentrifying it? And I really wish, shout out to Jay-Z, I really wish he hadn't said what he said.
Which is?
He said, gentrify your own neighborhood. And I was like,
I've heard that before, though. I've heard that actually a lot, that we should do it for our own neighborhoods. But why do you disagree with that statement, though?
I disagree with it because it sounds like semantics, but it's not. Words mean things.
Right.
So if I'm going to be a gentrifier, I'm essentially doing what anyone else, any other developer would do. I just have a black face doing it.
Okay.
So you don't want to gentrify your own neighborhood, because that means you're going to move your people out. You're going to rebrand that neighborhood.
Right.
You want to come to the neighborhood and you don't want to get rid of the history. You want to highlight the history, but you also want to create opportunities for people within that neighborhood. And yes, you do want to bring in amenities, and you want to bring in people with mixed income.
Right.
That's revitalizing.
Okay.
No one disagrees with revitalizing the neighborhood, because most of the neighborhoods that we're talking about, like specifically like Fair Park and South Dallas and neighborhoods in that same area, they were thriving before integration.
True.
And so all we're saying is these neighborhoods weren't always in the state that they're in. They were thriving when we had all of our businesses there. So the idea is that we're revitalizing, because that neighborhood was something, not saying, okay, let's just get rid of everyone and make this available to just people who are wealthy.
So what do you foresee as being your biggest challenge to get this done?
To revitalizing neighborhoods?
Yes.
Well, one, we have to think about it from the political landscape, because if we're being honest, there are people who have been in seats for a long time. There are people who are the ones creating the policy. There are people who are benefiting from the status quo. And so one of the things we have to think about is who represents us everywhere. And we have a lot of good representatives, but we need a change across the board where we have people who understand policy, who understand moving things forward and not status quo. So there are people in certain seats where they have, I would almost say, like a stopper in a tub from progress. And so if we are thinking about progressing, we have to have people who think in that manner. We have to have people who have a vision further out. So that's a challenge on the political landscape, because here, what I've learned about Dallas is that you have to go kiss rings and do things like that if you want to be in an elected position. But I think that has to go away.
Okay.
We have to have people who run for office and who do things based on the hard work and getting out to the people, because every seat belongs to the people.
Okay.
Seats do not belong to people in them. They belong to the entire community. And once we have candidates and people who subscribe to that, who want change, we want things to progress more quickly, then that's a challenge that we're willing to take on and that we can take on, because you talk to good leaders all the time. We ask them, why aren't you running for something? Why aren't you taking the risk to put yourself out there to the public? Because there are plenty of people that understand how to make things move, but a lot of times people stay on the sideline because they don't want to get involved in that web. But at some point, you have to get involved in that web. But it's more of us out here in the community than there are people who are wielding power. And that's a big challenge. The other challenge is just understanding what to do. And because there aren't a lot of peers in the real estate development world, there are people that look like us. And there are people that are in the age group. I just turned 40 this year. But most rooms that I'm in with other developers, I'm by far the youngest, and I'm absolutely the darkest.
Wow.
So, and that's not just because I'm dark.
So representation.
Right.
So let me ask you this. How do you think that term limits could impact everything you just said?
Oh man, it would make a world of difference. You want people to be in a seat long enough to make effective change, but you should not have career politicians. That being a politician shouldn't be a career.
Do you think it should be like a presidential thing where once you're done, you can't return?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think it should be the same length as a presidential term?
I think so.
Okay.
Because if we allow a president to have 2 4-year terms, you want some continuity of leadership. But if the highest office, you get 2 terms and that's it, then what makes us think that a city council person should be able to serve for 4 terms of 2 years, which is the same length of time, but be able to sit out a term and come back?
Right.
That's odd. And even with the county commissioner's court, you can serve until you die.
Can you really?
There's no term limit.
Oh, wow. You know, honestly, I did not know that. And it would make sense why some people have been in office for like 40 years.
Correct.
It's my entire life cycle, like almost my entire life cycle. I've
Yes,
seen. I think the person that you're running against has been in that seat for quite a long time, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, 38 years. He was elected in 1985.
The year after I was born. Telling on myself, jeez. The year after I was born. Well, so what can we do as a people? Because I think people feel that they have no power to make changes. I've heard a lot of people in our age demographic and younger say, well, my vote doesn't even count, so what's the point? And that's the general consensus of people that don't vote. It doesn't even matter. But those are also the same people that are complaining about the changes that aren't happening.
Right.
So what can people do to make change happen?
I love it. I love that question, because when people don't think they have power, that's because the people in power led them to believe that. Because if you think about everyone that you've talked to that says that, think about how many friends that they have that they could reach out to. Just imagine, I think I have about 4,300 just Facebook friends, right? Imagine if I never said anything on there. No one ever liked a post. I just left the page blank and said, see, no one likes Facebook.
I see where you're going.
Because there's no interaction.
Right.
But as soon as you make a post, people like, people comment, but they all see it. So imagine if you asked someone that said exactly what you're saying, that we have no power. Imagine if they posted one day and said, you know what? We're going to come together and we're going to decide every single seat Let's take Dallas, for example. There are 15 seats on city council, including the mayor. And because it's a weak mayor system, the mayor, the only power that he has is he has an extra vote and he can put something on the agenda. So essentially, he's another city council member. So there's 15 people. If you want any policy passed in the city of Dallas, you need 8 votes. Imagine if we all decided, like I told you, I'm 40. You're almost there.
Yes.
Imagine if we went to our age group. You know, we like to have kickbacks. We like to go to concerts. I saw a number of people at Beyonce's concert. Imagine if everyone there said, you know what? I want to commit to making sure that we have 8 votes amongst our peers. Then we say, okay, well, which district are we going to pick? Well, let's pick 8 of them. Let's find people who live in those districts. Let's fund them. I mean, if you fund about $100,000 for any seat, you can win it in the city of Dallas.
Really?
That's only $800,000.
Yeah, it's not a lot. It's not a lot in the big scheme of things. It's really not.
That's not.
Okay.
We could crowdfund $800,000.
You can.
I'm just giving an example.
Yeah.
We have PACs. We have those. We have ones that are geared towards people our age. But if we decided to say we're going to put the power back in the hands of the people, we could easily do that. And this is not to shame anyone that hasn't done it. It's more of an encouragement. It's saying, hey, it's a lot of us. And we have money. Even if our disposable income isn't what we think it is. But if you donate $25 a month and you have thousands of us doing it, you get to 800,000 really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's money. Now we have a machine. We have all kinds of people who are experts at understanding how to run a race. So now we decide, okay, this is the person we're going to get behind. There's no one that they could put up with the establishment that could beat any one of us. And I say that with extreme confidence because we have heavy hitters in every one of those districts, but we just haven't organized fully to the point where we're going to grab power.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Running a race, outside of everything you just said, what are some of the other difficulties that you've run into along this path? Because you told me you were a developer, right?
Yes, sir.
So why choose to pivot into politics?
Well, because politics got in the way of development.
That's a difficulty, for sure.
Because when you go down to the city, you know, I'm sure someone will be upset that I'll say this, but I don't really care.
Go for it.
When you go to the city, and this is before this current administration, so this is a few years back. I won't say when, I'm going to be nice. However, when you ask the city and say, hey, I want to develop in South Dallas, there are 221 vacant lots that you all own. I have the capacity to make sure those houses get built. Let me have those lots because they're sitting there and no one wants them. And they told me no. I said, that's okay. But let me purchase them. I said, I'll put together a fund, I'll purchase them, and we'll make sure the houses get built within a year. And that's a lot of houses within 1 year, but we put together the capacity to do so. And they still said no. They said, we don't know you.
We don't. Oh, the good old boy system.
Yeah.
I'll say it. That's what that's. And I don't know if that's what that is, but that's what it sounds like to me.
That's exactly what it is.
Wow.
I said, so someone that showed up with a plan that's effective, and people wonder why I built, people asked me why I didn't necessarily, work within that system. I said, well, when I received that answer.
How can you?
Right. So that's why I did everything private sector. That's why I bootstrapped it all. I said, you know what, that's okay. Because one, I'm not going to do that. We're not playing under the table. I'm not, going and kissing anybody's ring.
Yeah.
But that's when I realized the politics was in the way of development.
Wow.
And so when, for me as a developer, I think about people like, it's interesting. I watched Ross Perot Jr. do this. He looked at the Reunion Arena. He was developing Victory Park
Okay.
downtown.
Right.
You know, it used to be a brownfield. It
I
was
remember.
all kinds of, you know, toxic waste
Right.
and things like that. And he said, well, I want to do a development here. And, you know, he looked at the stadium and he said, it's in my way. So he bought the Mavericks because the stadium, the arena, was in the way.
You serious? Wow. I mean, that's a good amount of money too. Jeez, that's wild. I did not know that.
Yeah. I mean, he sold it to Mark Cuban and, you know, made all his money
That's how
back.
this. So, okay.
But he only bought it. He only bought the team because the arena was in the way
Chess
of the
move.
development. And so I use that example for this question that you asked me. I said, well, how can I develop what needs to be developed for our community? Now, he was doing that just because he wanted to develop Victory Park. And, you know, great development, all that good stuff. But then he bought an entire NBA franchise because something was in the way of development. So for me, when I tell you politics is in the way of me being able to develop the community, to actually revitalize without gentrifying, politics was in the way. And so I kind of ran from it. You know, I've always been interested, and I always tell people I'm not a politician, I'm a leader. And it was in the way for me being able to do what I need to do. Because there are people in place that are holding things back because they had to do things a certain way. And this is not to be critical of them. They had to do things a certain way at a certain point in time, but now that time is different. We need different solutions. We need new solutions. We need a new vision for how we can move forward. And if you are holding on to things because you just don't want to let them go, then sometimes let it go and be an advisor. The position I'm taking is there are no safe seats. Because politics got in the way of good development, I have to also explain that now we have to move people out of seats because they won't freely go. Okay. And so this is to demonstrate that there is no fear. There is no guaranteed seat. And we're building an army and we're putting in the work. Even as we speak, my team is texting me. I don't know what they're saying right now, but they're talking to each other, strategizing. Because this is not a campaign to get my name out there. I don't need that. This is not a campaign for vanity or, you know, to make money. I don't need any of those things. I mean, I need money.
Yes,
but I can make.
I understand.
I can make it in a different way.
I believe you because when I looked behind you when you came in this building, I didn't see an entourage, a publicist, and all these people telling me what you can and can't talk to me about. No, you came in by yourself, and we've had this conversation, just you and I. And so I trust what you say, and I love what you're running on because we need that. And in Dallas, I don't think I've heard that because it seems as though currently Dallas is not really looking at revitalization. It looks like they're just making money. There's 8 million people here now.
Right.
We're becoming a mecca in this country. And I just don't see a lot of change coming behind that. I see a lot of commerce.
Right.
If you look up north in Frisco, there's a ton of things being built. If you look anywhere north, 75 going north, everything looks great. Right. But nothing is changing where the majority of the landmass is, which is in that the book that we talked about, the accommodation.
Correct.
That's why I agree with you when you say it's a 2.0. Right. It's much of the same. Nothing's really changed. So the question for you is, a question I have for you is when you are in that seat, right? I like to be prophetic, right? Yes, so when you are in that seat, what's the first thing you change to make these things come to fruition?
Oh, I love that question, you know, because everyone asks, what are your first 100 days going to look like? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we put together is a full policy team. So we will be releasing policies on housing, economic development, and transportation immediately. Because those are the three main things I'm running on. And so one, if we want to have home ownership increase, you know, as a developer, I can't change the price of the 2x4. I can't change the price of labor. But what we can do is invest in buying down equity for people, buying down interest rates. So one of the things that we'll do there are 17 cities within District 3, but there are more cities within Dallas County because remember the policies that we'll be pushing are for the entire county.
Right.
We just know that a high tide raises all ships, and District 3 needs a lot more help than maybe some of the other districts.
Right.
So with housing, if we have areas that aren't at 50%, that means we need to partner with the cities in those areas, those 17 cities in District 3 and then the 34 cities in the county. We need to say, okay, you all have funds from the federal government for down payment assistance. Well, we're going to release a bond, and I'm going to push for this. Obviously, I have to have 2 more votes. But when you think about how you're investing money, when you invest in home ownership, that comes back in the form of property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And residents pay more property taxes than commercial. We could do a whole podcast on that.
Whenever you want to come back.
which is not right.
Right.
But if you promote small business, which is the economic development part,
Mm-hmm.
because the other part of that bond would be for small businesses. Because imagine, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, when you started this platform, if you could have come to the county, if I was in charge, one of the policies that I'm putting in place is to make sure that we invest in small businesses.
So would this be a small business that you would invest into, even though it's not brick and mortar?
It absolutely is.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And all I ask is that you operate in the county. Because when you operate in the county, although you're not paying property taxes immediately, now you may buy a house here.
To be closer to my said business.
There you go.
Gotcha.
But also
Okay.
your business pays sales taxes.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so sales taxes also funds transportation. So now when you think about people that you want to hire, if they live in Lancaster, they can't catch a bus to get to work.
No.
But if we increase sales taxes, we increase businesses that are here, now you have opportunities to build things because this business could be, you could have a satellite studio in Lancaster in a development where now you have someone that lives there, but then the office is right there.
You got me thinking.
Right.
Because I honestly had thought of course I want my own brick and mortar, right? Because I'd like to have my own space where I come in and set up. I want to have my own space where I can teach other people how to do what we're doing too. But I always thought, and this is being honest, I want to look into the nucleus of Dallas,
Sure.
where it's booming at, right? Because I mean, why wouldn't you want to be downtown? Why wouldn't you? But I never really thought about that because I didn't know how that system. I didn't even know how that system worked. So
Right.
that is a really good thought process for me to kind of chew on. So
Right. And the type of policies that we're pushing is to encourage that kind of development. Because if you think about it, let's say you live in South Dallas and then you get a job in Rowlett. Now, there are 2 problems here. I have no problem with where someone has a job. And Rowlett is actually in District 3,
is it really?
which is interesting. Yeah.
I grew up in Raleigh. I did not know that. I grew up in Raleigh. I did not know that. No, yes, I did. That would make sense why I saw John Wiley Price's name a lot out there. So, okay, I didn't know that. That's cool.
So imagine you have a job out there. You live in South Dallas, but you can't get there.
The distance.
The distance. If you ride the bus, it'll take you 2 hours. If you ride the train, you got to take an Uber to get to the train station. And that's costing more money than probably the job pays.
And there's literally only like one stop in Raleigh, and you got to figure it out from there.
Correct.
Okay.
So you're going to have to catch Uber twice.
Right.
So while the train is there and that's great, and Dart did a really good job with that, there's also these gaps in transportation. But when you promote a business, going back to the capital grant program that I'm going to push, when you started your business, imagine I give you a check for $100,000 and I say, I just want you to do business in this county.
Mm-hmm.
Does that change the landscape of your business when you started
That
out?
changes a lot because I can provide opportunity to other people too, and therefore I can grow my business even deeper and wider. So it absolutely would have changed things. I did it all off my own back.
Right.
If I had a little help, this thing could go up faster. And so, and if it's everything you're saying is bringing back taxes to the community, all that stuff could be happening a lot quicker. At the rate I'm at now, when can I actually be a really active, functioning part of the community? Right now, I'm just building.
Correct.
But how long did that happen without having those types of systems in place? Who knows how long that would take? So
Correct. And when you invest in small business, it always comes back. And I run a for-profit company. And so even though I'm talking about revitalization without gentrification, at the end of the day, I have kids to send to college.
Same.
So I'm not doing it for free,
Right.
but we're doing it with thought. So imagine if your government takes that same approach, and I'm hoping that they elect someone that understands for profit, because government, a lot of times we see money go out the window and you don't get a return. The return for government is taxes and the betterment of the community.
Right.
Because that's how we look at it. If we're not raising society, from the bottom, then what are we doing?
You're going to create the gap, and the gap gets wider.
Correct.
So you're trying to narrow the gap.
That's it.
That's beautiful.
That's it.
Beautiful.
So when you ask, how can we make these things happen? I mean, our team, we're writing those policies, and the people on my team are people who are former city managers, former assistant city managers, people who had all these skill sets but weren't allowed to thrive in some of those seats in some of those different cities. So these folks are experts at writing policy. They understand land use. They understand zoning. They understand all of those things that a lot of times we are locked out of, and we don't understand, okay, well, if everything is zoned single family, then there's only so much tax basis that can be derived from that area. But if you also rezone another part of the area and you have those small businesses, now you have some more commercial zoning, you have more property taxes coming in, you have more people. So what you're doing is you're increasing the tax basis. You're not increasing taxes for each person. You're actually lowering the tax, each person's personal tax basis, by having more people and more businesses, because we have all the vacant areas. We have vacant lots. We have vacant buildings. You start strategically filling them up. Imagine you're a podcast in your own building.
That
Now,
dollar starts to circulate in the community more too.
There you go.
I got you. Okay.
Now you see from a policy standpoint,
Right.
As a developer, it's easy to see. As a developer, it's like, okay, well, I need to fill this building up. So, hey, I want you there. I want you there. Or if I'm a developer that's building something, hey, I'm building it. Why don't you come buy it? Simple transaction.
Right.
As a government, I'm saying, okay, well, how do I get more businesses with people who will value this community, people who will live in this community, and people who will spend money in this community, and people who will attract other people to come spend money right here? Okay. That's how you grow your tax bases while not gentrifying the area.
When I listen to you talk, it reminds me of when the player becomes the coach. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Like, some of your coaches are great, but they haven't actually played the game.
Right.
And so with you being a developer, it's almost like I want my politicians to be developers. If they have that same mentality, we can do a lot of damage pretty quickly.
Absolutely. That's why I encourage people to become developers in their own neighborhood. That's why, going back to that, don't gentrify your own neighborhood. Revitalize it.
Yeah.
And I tell people there's no competition in real estate. That's why I mentor people. That's why I encourage other developers. I ask them where they're developing, because I want to come develop right next to you, because their development helps mine and mine helps them. And now that's why I want more of us developing, because that's how you prevent gentrification. Because if you're doing the right thing in the neighborhood, because the people are going to hold you accountable. If you go out there and build something that they don't like, they're going to tell you. And that'll be the only thing you build.
That's right.
There. So most people will bend to the, arc of doing the right thing.
I agree with that.
Particularly if it's a neighborhood where they're from, or a neighborhood that's similar. There's greed. Every community has greed.
Of course.
But the more people you have that have a certain skill set, or you can help get into it, one, I can't build everything, nor do I want to, because you want different flavors. When you go to the ice cream shop, does everyone get vanilla? No. There are different flavors. So for me, if all I make is vanilla, I'm really good at vanilla, that's my niche. But you want the 32 flavors. So I want other developers in that neighborhood, because then guess what? More people come in and they might buy vanilla, because a lot of people might like vanilla.
see.
but I need some Rocky Road. I need some strawberry
Right,
cream, you know.
right, right.
So
With revitalization, I mean, it goes out saying it brings more jobs too.
absolutely.
When you talked about distance from, let's say, Pleasant Grove or, Balch Springs to Rowlett, so to speak, right?
Right.
Well, if you have those jobs in those communities, you can now also circulate the dollar more too.
Correct.
Because people are really likely to spend that money in their community. I know I spend money around my house, which means that dollar is circulating around my neighborhood, around my area.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's what economic development is. We like to make it fancy and make it sound, super
It
intellectual.
sounds very simple.
It's actually very
I
simple.
haven't ever had anyone break it down to me. I've read about it, obviously, but that's a lot of verbiage, right? And
Right.
if that's not your wheelhouse, if you're smart, you can pick it up.
Right.
But for the average person, that doesn't make sense.
No.
I'm glad you broke it down the way you did today, so the people that are listening can
Right.
get a better gauge on why they should be voting for you.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times we vote the ticket that we've grown up on, or mom was
Right.
Democrat, dad was Republican. It's just the household vote, so we just kind of follow suit.
Right.
But to actually get it to where it's digestible
Right.
and it makes sense, it makes it easier for me to vote. So I'm glad you said all these things, because truthfully, I haven't heard it in that context or that simplified.
Right.
So for me, honestly, I might have fallen victim to, my grandma was a Democrat. Let me just vote blue.
Right.
Check, right? But did I really understand what I was looking at?
Right.
And so my question for you, what would be your advice to people when voting? And if you want to give them the dates and times when
Sure.
this all kicks off, but what's your advice to the voter, young and old, honestly? What's your
Right.
advice?
Well, one, I know you said, people vote straight ticket, and right now, of course, we have Republicans leading the state, so they did away with the straight ticket because they understood that a lot of the cities were going blue. And so they said, okay, if these large cities are voting in mass, those numbers might overwhelm them, in the legislature. So now you have to pick who you're, even if you're voting in a Democratic primary, which I'm running in, think about who you're voting for as opposed to just going down the line and checking names. And so, one, I always encourage people to early vote because the lines are short.
True too. Yeah.
And thanks to Dallas County, and for me, I give credit where credit is due. The Commissioner's Court and the Elections Department said, they finally decided that early voting, you can vote anywhere.
Meaning you don't have to go to your respective district.
Correct.
I think I understand why that was a thing before, but we don't have to go there. But I understand. But that's fair. That makes it a little bit easier.
It makes it easier.
Because I used to have to travel back to Rowlett.
Correct.
From wherever I was. Yeah. So I actually like that. So okay.
Now you have more access.
Right.
And typically 2 weeks before the election day, you have early voting. In this case, it starts February 20th.
Mark that on your calendars. Please go vote. We need it.
Show up the first day.
Get it out the way.
Get it out the way.
Yeah.
Now, of course, shamelessly, vote. If you're in District 3, vote for your boy, Derek Avery. But, it's one of those things where you have 2 weeks to vote early, and then you have election day. And so for me, I always encourage people to say, okay, you have an opportunity to research, even if you don't vote the very first day. Most campaigns get down to the nitty gritty when it's a March primary because it'll be a presidential primary. More people show up and people worry about the president when literally your day to day is decided by the local officials because
Accurate.
The policies that touch you day to day are people that you can literally find them and go call them and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? The judges that, decide who's free and who goes to jail, they're very accessible during this time. And I encourage people to say, hey, if you don't know who to vote for, go find their campaign. Because my website is simple. It's Derek for Dallas. You can find a member of my team. You can call me directly, send us an email, and whatever question, we'll answer it. And it's telling when a campaign doesn't respond. I'll just say that.
Noted.
But if you really want to understand, people will take the time to educate, because if you're voting for a random judge and it's just 2 names on there and you vote for the name that sounds the coolest, you don't actually have to do that.
It's gonna suck when you have to face that judge one day too, and you voted for him. So, but yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
And in a race like mine, I want people to see that I'm making myself very accessible. I'm easy to find. I mean, if you Google hard enough, you can find my phone number. And because of some of the work I did, I used to house people who are unhoused. So there are people who lived on the street who have my personal phone number, and they say, "Well, we've never met an executive before." And I was like, "Well, you need to fix that.
Right.
We need to get out of the ivory towers and go to the streets and actually see where the problems are." So when we think about voting, you have 2 weeks to really figure it out, and you'll see it'll get hot and heavy in January and February. I'm campaigning now because, I want people to know what I'm about and who I am and to get some time to know me. But a lot of the other campaigns, they start now, but that's when you see the TV ads and people spending the big money right before the election because people make decisions at the last minute. And some people make the decision at the poll.
They're impulsive.
Right. And it may be for some random reason, but this is an opportunity. Go early, learn who the candidates are, and learn who represents your values the most and make that decision.
Okay.
And I think that when you do that, you have an opportunity to say, okay, I made the choice to vote for this person. And then you tell your friends, and just going back to the example that I was given about Facebook, when people say, my vote doesn't count. Imagine if you decided you liked a candidate. You called their campaign. They showed up where you live. They showed up in your neighborhood, or they showed up to a public event, and you got a chance to talk to them. You say, you know what? I'm going to tell all of my Facebook friends they need to vote for this person, or they need to engage with them on social media, or they need to donate, even if it's a small amount. Imagine if all 4,000 of my friends said, you know what? If 20% of them donated $100, we'd have more money than the campaign needs.
Wow. Okay.
And you can do that with any candidate. So when you think about your vote not counting, people are banking on you saying that. But imagine if we all showed up in mass during early voting. And then on election day, we chilling deciding which voting party to go to.
I like that.
And that's what I want my folks to do. Vote early so you can come party with me on March 5th.
Oh, I need to be there.
Listen, we going to have a big concert.
I need to be there.
Yes, sir.
I need to be there. Is there a one-stop shop where people can read about all the various candidates? Or is it individual sites?
A really good site to go to is the League of Women's Voters.
League of Women's, okay.
That's a good site to see before every election. They go through and painstakingly review all the different candidates, and their site is really robust.
Okay. If you have a fantasy football team, then you can do this too.
Correct.
Because I know a lot of people in my fantasy league probably don't even know who they're voting for. So all of y'all go read about these candidates the way you read about the football players.
Absolutely.
Like, you need to be. I used to tell my friends that you should know your politicians the way you know stat lines.
Absolutely.
You have to. I was like, that's all fun, but they're not putting anything in your pocket or revitalizing your community or doing anything. It's just entertainment.
Correct.
It's almost blinding you to what you need to be paying attention to. I like fantasy football too. Don't get me wrong. I like sports too, but at the same time, I need to know what's going on in my community too.
Absolutely. And look at your leaders' voting records, because they can use all the rhetoric that they want. They can come on podcasts and say nice words, but look at what they vote for.
Vet them, basically.
Yes, all of it is public. You can go on any Dallas County, you can go on City of Dallas or whatever city, and you can see what they voted for.
Okay.
And understand, how that affects you in the day-to-day. Because someone may say they're for you, but if you look at their voting record, that tells you what they're actually for.
Very nice, very nice. Well, before we wrap this up, what are any final words, and also give everyone how they can find you, how they can locate you, and where they can read about you and learn more about you. But any final words in closing before we get out of here?
Yeah, the one thing I always tell people, revitalization without gentrification means that we're not degrading history and we're not displacing people, and gentrification is a pejorative. It's a bad word. It's like saying the F word.
I could agree after you explained it to me that way. Yes, I agree.
Right. And I say that very clearly, and I say that at the end because I want people to remember that because people like to argue with me and say gentrification is a good thing, because they're looking at the Webster's dictionary of gentrification and they say, well, isn't that a good thing? No, it's absolutely not. And revitalization is a good thing because you're rebuilding something that was already strong. Gentrifying means that you're bringing in new people and you're replacing the people who are there, and you're rebranding the neighborhood. You're changing the name. You're giving it a fancy name. It already had a name because you want to make it digestible for other people. With gentrification, that's why I'm very clear about it. That's why I did a presentation on it, and I want people to understand that we can revitalize neighborhoods without gentrifying them. It just takes work. It takes planning. We have to have historical markers. There's a whole strategy behind it. This is just one small part. And for me, I'm real easy to find. The campaign site is Derek, DEREKFOR, Dallas, Derek for Dallas. My website, my company is Core, COIR Development. Just go to Google Core Development, go to coreholdings.com, and you'll find everything you need to know about me. Or if you just Google Derek Avery Dallas, you may find some interesting articles.
Perfect. I like it.
And all my social media is exactly the same. The political side is Derek for Dallas. The personal side is just Derek Avery.
Mr. Avery, we should have you come out to our live event. We have a live show coming up. You should come meet some people, shake some hands.
I love it.
Try my new beer. It's coming up. So, yeah, come on down, man. We'll be at Celestial. That's our brand partner. They're awesome. So,
nice.
If you ever just want to sit around and have a beer and talk about revitalization, I'm totally down. This is a really, really cool conversation. But I wanted to thank you for coming in. I wanted to thank you for everything you said because it's very necessary. I want to wish you the best on your campaign trail.
Thank you.
Please get this guy out of here. Hey, no disrespect, but I just want to see some change come to the city. And if it's going to be by way of you, then I'm all down for that.
Yes, sir. Well,
this is my city. I have a love-hate relationship with it, but I would love to see it grow.
And that's what
everything you're talking about is what we need for that to happen. So with this influx of 8 million people in Dallas, I need some growth to be coming along with that.
Absolutely.
I don't want to just see finance and commerce going to one side of town. I think we could all have a piece of the pie. Absolutely. And so if you can make that happen, I'm totally there. You got my vote.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir, for coming in.
Yes, sir.
As always, by the way, guys, go by there, see them. Tell Celestial we sent you. He'll give you 15% off our live shows November 10th. Take a link us up. Come see us. I'm sure he'll drop in and say hi. So come on down, shake some hands. Don't kiss any rings. We're not doing any of that weird stuff, but at least shake his hand. But as always, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate every listen. We hope that you grow. We hope that you evolve. And we hope that you come back and kick it with us all over again. Let me give you some. I couldn't leave you without it, man.
What? I needed that.
Drop a bomb, too. All right, y'all. We're out of here. We Prophetic.